The one thing I do want to note is Mount Baldy will need some type of fee-for-service service from somewhere, so we might have to build that in after we figure out how we're going to continue to serve their mental health students. So I just wanted to point that out. I couldn't add that in right now because we're not sure how we're going to handle that at this point. With that being said, again, columns N is where you can see what each district is projected to receive for next year. Question?
Okay, thank you, Tim. That leads us into C4.
Thank you. This is our current year projection of our P2 AB 602 funding model. We did one of these in March based off the P1 funding exhibit. We're presenting another one now just because of a couple of factors have changed. Number one being that you'll see later on is Ontario Montclair has changed their fee-for-service rates. That is an agenda item later on today. Besides that, we finally received our local assistance grant, which is part of our funding model, and we now have our, what is known as our April 1st fee-for-service counts, which, because fee-for-service is such a big part of our funding model, it really changed the numbers. So overall, the SELPA-wide apportionment is still $56 million. The amount between districts has changed. For the most part, in this case, Ontario Montclair is receiving more money, and also Student Services, which is our fee-for-service provider for the county. It's just based on fee-for-service usage. That's the biggest change. Again, after the narrative, you'll have a SELPA-wide summary for 2 pages, and after that, you'll have your district-specific summary if you just want to see your info. Any questions on it? Going too fast?
Okay, thank you, Tim. That leads us into C5. Yeah.
Okay, so this is our 17-18 preliminary funding model for AB 602. Again, we're going to be a 9-district SELPA. So I worked with Jack Lucas. He's a consultant for school services. He's also a consultant for Ontario Montclair. And what he did was he created a template that separates the state's funding exhibit from the 10-district SELPA to OMSD by itself, and then 9-district SELPA, which is going to be us next year. I used that template to kind of project what our funding is going to be like next year. He also did the same for our local assistance grant. So I used basically his templates, plugged it into our funding model to have this preliminary funding model for you today. SELPA-wide, for a 9-district SELPA, we're projecting $45,846,000. I've included a copy of that template here after the 2-page SELPA summary, and then after the state exhibit, you can see your district-specific summary. The one thing I wanted to point out is most districts probably look like they receive more money, but keep in mind that those districts using Ontario Montclair will have to in turn pay money directly to Ontario Montclair instead of that being part of our funding model. Any questions?
Just a brief one, Tim. I'm sure there's a rationale. I think they can hear me. In regards to C5, the COLA is at 148. I think when Nancy articulated her concern, it was 2.0, but you stated it was actually 3.5. So is there a rationale in regards to different COLA rates based on these?
Sure, I can clarify. Yeah. So the 3.5% projected COLA is for the 2016-17 school year. The 2% COLA is for the 17-18 school year. And this 1.48 COLA is for special ed revenue. Susan kind of mentioned it under her administrator's report. That's not related to salaries. That's for revenue.
Very good, thank you.
Sure.
So if it's determined by the average of the surrounding school districts, but those averages haven't been determined yet, do you go back and adjust it based on?
No, it's whoever sells by May 1st. So we take a look at all the 12 districts in the agreement, and then the settlement that's done by May 1st. If it's not done by May 1st, it's just the rest of the districts. And there have been times when there's no revenues, they go 0 and average 0. But it depends on what the districts do. It's been a long time agreement in the collective bargaining agreement for county programs.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Tim. That moves to 6.
This is just a discussion item. You won't have anything in your agenda packet. In the past, the provider programs have always brought the fee-for-service rates as an approval item to the Superintendents Council. After discussing it further, it seemed more fitting that it was a notification since the fee-for-service rates are what they are. So we wanted to make sure that the plan is from now on to present them as a fiscal notification after this school year. We wanted to make sure before we make that change that there wasn't any opposition from the council today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. That moves us into section D. We do have a card, Ada Luke.
Yeah, these are the minutes of the last meeting, and specifically the section under public comment where I spoke regarding the process of appointment for the CAC representatives. I don't think it does justice to what I said. I specifically objected to the way the process is run by the WESELPAs to only pick those parents that are WESELPA friendlies. The other comment under E1 of the minutes are the legal services of Dennis, Wolliver, and Kelly. And I don't think that the comments by Dr. Hammond were accurately reflected. I think he had very specific comments. And once again, there's legal representation now for litigation against one of the member districts. And this was really outrageous because it was this body, a majority of this body, and thank you to the districts like Upland that didn't vote for that, expelled OMSD. And now we're using special education dollars to litigate against this district and send letters to the legislature misrepresenting what happened. I saw the letter that was sent, and it made it seem like OMSD was the one that wanted to leave the district, the WESELPA. I mean, it completely misrepresented the facts. This is why the West End WESELPA made it into the Public Policy Institute of California report as footnote number 29 on page 23 of the report, which would make sense as to why Susan wants the report rejected under a later item E10. But I will quote from the report. In one case, a Southern California WESELPA expelled a district amid a dispute over the quality of regional services. That's OMSD, and that's the West End WESELPA. And this is one of the reasons that the WESELPAs are getting a bad rap, because maybe there's another WESELPA out there that's trying to do the right thing, but certainly it's not happening in this WESELPA. And this is why we are glad that the report got out and that somebody else other than us parents, who is an independent entity, is actually recognizing some of these problems. I'll quote further from the report as it states, multi-district WESELPAs are less locally controlled and accountable. The WESELPA structure deprives districts of independent authority to use state and federal special education funds in ways that best meet student needs. Districts are governed by elected school boards, while multi-district WESELPAs are governed by boards composed primarily of district superintendents. In addition, districts are governed by elected school boards, which generally make them more responsive to parents and communities than appointed WESELPA superintendents. No disrespect to you superintendents, but that is the process that this democracy is based on, a process of self-governance and a process of being able to hold our elected officials accountable. And I recognized this problem many years ago, and that's why I introduced, or had Senator Correa introduce SB 701, which the WESELPA Lobbying Association made sure got killed right away. And this is precisely one of the problems. But, you know, the word is getting out, and unless we change the culture in this WESELPA, it is just going to continue to become the example of a bad WESELPA in California. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have, I don't know if Ms. Luke, that was also your comments from D2 to D5 included? You had D?
No.
Okay, so D2 to D5.
Did you want me to go into D2, D5? Okay. So D2 and D5 are through D5 are settlement agreements. Once again, here we are doing litigation instead of education. There is one of the settlement agreements has $22,000 for attorney fees. That does not report the attorney fees that were spent by the WESELPA. And I think that's a figure that you need to ask for. That figure is buried somewhere, but it's not reflected in the actual settlement agreement. Okay, so that was just reimbursement to the parent for attorney fees. So let's think about this. Parents are forced to avail themselves of the due process system, hire an attorney for $22,000 when we're seeing cuts to kids, but WESELPA's getting a COLA of 3.5%. We have one behavior specialist for 9 districts. Is it fair to expect that behavior specialist to be able to serve 9 districts? I mean, I really don't blame the staff when the system is stacked against them. I am sympathetic to the plight of the teachers in special ed. We're not seeing many teachers go into special ed. We're not seeing many people going into education, period. And it's this system that is broken, that does not prioritize the services to kids. Here we are having cuts to kids. These parents under D2 through D5, what are they asking for? They're not asking for dolphin therapy. They're not asking for equestrian therapy. They're asking for tutoring. They're asking for educational services and for assessments. But yet, parents have to go through due process and visit Mr. Royal Lord to get an invitation to the ADR training, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a sham. It's going to be how to make parents nicer to, be kinder and gentler to the WESELPA, and we're going to be the bad guys. And by the way, I know several parents that have been in Mr. Lord's office that did not get the invitation to the alternative dispute resolution training. So this is a big problem. And now not only are we seeing these funds being used to litigate against parents and now against a district like OMSD, but there's a new layer of insult when now they're hiring lobbyists and they're lobbying against your district's own interest. And you need to keep that in mind, that you work for a board, for a local education agency, and not sending money to those districts directly, go directly against those interests. Thank you.
Thank you. That leads us to the consent items. Do we have a motion to approve Section D, the consent items, D1 through 5?
I'll move approval.
Approved by, motion by James. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Wayne. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. So we will move now to Section E. We have Mr. Palmer, E1.
Yes, thank you. I'm very concerned about the policy in regards to independent education evaluations. First of all, the policy that's stated is not the procedures that are actually done. The first and foremost thing that ever happens when a parent requests an IEE is they're denied the IEE. That's not anywhere on the procedures here, the policy. But that's what happens every single time a parent asks for an IEE. The first thing is that IEE is denied. And then you have to ask again. I know because I've done it a couple times, and I've done it in different districts, so I know that that's a policy coming from the WESELPA itself. And I'm assuming that that's the action that's taken from number 1, which says the district special education, and I'm sorry, I'm on page 2 of 4 on item E1A. In the middle there, response to request, it says the first step to take and it says this is steps to take to resolve the issue. The first step is notify the special ed administrator. I'm not sure how that step resolves the issue, other than tells the special administrator, hey, send out that letter saying no, you can't have it. That's what that is. It just baffles me that you have a policy in place that you don't follow. So I would encourage you to actually follow the policy and stop denying IEEs automatically. And I've sat in your office, Ms. Bobbitt, and you know that this is the issue. You know this is what you've instructed the school district to do. So it should at least, if you're going to continue to do it, reflect that in your policy manual. And then also, you know, you state that the number 3, the district may request to review its evaluation or with the parents to identify the areas of disagreement. However, parents are not obligated to explain why they disagree. This is a tactic that's just used to confuse parents. If you're asking for something, the parents are going to assume, and they do, that they need to tell you. And you know that, and you're using that against them. And I struggle with that. I don't think that's appropriate. I would like it to be very clear that, you know, you're asking them to do something that they don't have to do. And then also, the number 4, you're saying, well, one of the next steps can be, we'll let somebody else at another school site assess them. And if they do that, they have to waive their request to an IEE. This is, again, a confusing tactic that's used against the parents. Do they understand that they're waiving their right to the evaluation that they requested? If they requested that evaluation, of course they want that evaluation. And you know, and I know, that to provide that evaluation by another school site in your district is not independent.
Thank you. We have another card for item E1. That's Ms. Luke.
Yes, I commented on this item last time as well, and wanted to echo Dave's comments. The WESELPA does not have the legal authority to pass policies that are contrary to state and federal law. When you're adding hurdles, I think there's a big disconnect between who the law is supposed to serve. So we have to go back and analyze basic principles of government. The Constitution is there not to protect government against the citizens, but to protect citizens against the overreach of government. So federal law is there to be protective to students and citizens, not to the agency. And this agency seems to think, I mean, it's really creative about how they go about skirting the law. Local bodies can adopt policies that are more stringent and protective, but to whom? To children with disabilities, not more protective to agency staff, and not more protective to the agency. And we see this time and time and again where parents go to the district and they're told at the IEP meeting, well, it's a policy. And the district has no such policy, so it's the WESELPA that has the policy. And these policies are contrary to state and federal law. So adding these hoops for parents to jump through. And I testified last time how there was even within the same document, there's contradictory language. One part says parents shall submit a letter, and then another part of it says parents may be asked to submit a letter. A lot of these parents have not been around the special ed system as long as I have, and it is really unfair that these parents are coming to this agency for help, and what they're getting is they're being bamboozled, and their rights are being watered down, and the process is made even more difficult than what it already is. I think it is really unfair, and maybe in 5, 10 years, 15 other years, it'll catch up to this agency. It's already catching up. I mean, this is not sustainable. This is not a system that is sustainable. It is a corrupt system that is not functioning. It is a dictatorial system that goes against the very principles this country was founded on. I mean, this is what happens in Cuba, where I came from. And